He revolutionized the film industry, built the most dazzling motion picture studio in history, and earned the moniker Tiffany of the movie studios. Louis B. Mayer's impact on Hollywood was unparalleled. He was the father of the star system, the creator of legends, and, in the opinion of many, the single most influential individual the industry has ever produced. But with all his power and magnanimous deeds came a darker side. Stories of corruption, manipulation, and untamed rage swirl around him. He was, by many accounts, an unstoppable force who could turn a celebrity into a superstar or sink a career in the blink of an eye. No film studio ever symbolized Hollywood's golden glitz more than Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer under Mayer's leadership. He made it the envy of the industry, a place where stars were groomed to be larger than life. He was among the first to see the potential of creating a factory of dreams, churning out new feature films at a jaw-dropping pace. As history would show, he understood the public's demand for idealized romances and wholesome adventures. Meanwhile, scandal after scandal was hushed by the studio's own fixers, thereby preserving MGM's spotless facade. To some, Mayer was a paternal figure whose guidance and discipline created success. To others, he was an imposing presence whose unpredictable wrath brought ruin. Today, countless rumored misdeeds still provoke curiosity, and stories about Mayer's ferocious control continue to captivate film scholars. While some modern-day controversies have placed producers and executives like Harvey Weinstein or Sean Diddy Combs under the microscope, old Hollywood insiders have maintained that the real godfather was Louis B. Mayer. He stands at the dawn of Tinseltown mythology, credited with shaping the Oscars into the supreme accolade in the film industry and codifying how the world celebrates cinematic achievements. This is the extraordinary journey of the man who made Hollywood what it is, and a chilling chronicle of what he did to get there. Humble beginnings and early hustle. Louis B. Mayer's biography resembles an underdog script. He was born Lazar Mayer on July 4, 1885, a date he fervently insisted upon later, despite unclear records, in the region that is now eastern Poland. His parents, Jacob and Sarah Mayer, were Jewish immigrants grappling with the brutal realities of life in a place often hostile to their faith. Eager for a better future, the family joined the steady stream of hopeful migrants heading to North America. They settled initially on Long Island, but survival was a constant challenge, and his mother resorted to selling chickens door to door. Seeing his family's hardships, Mayer quit school at the age of 12 to help bring money into the home. Their poverty was crushing, but it sharpened his survival skills. As a teenager, Mayer joined his father in the scrap metal trade. Eventually, he branched out on his own, pushing a small cart labeled junk dealer through town. This was not a story of immediate success, but of grit. His upbringing in a family that predominantly spoke Yiddish at home meant that formal learning in English was never easy. Yet within these difficulties, Mayer began forging the iron will he would one day use to tame the harsh environment of movie production. A turning point arrived in 1907 when Mayer took over a rundown theater in Haverhill, Massachusetts. Renaming it the Orpheum, he reopened the place with a religious film. His choice of that particular screening was no accident. He wanted to clean the tarnished reputation of the former burlesque theater. The strategy worked so well that within a few years, Mayer owned 5 theaters in the area. By 1918, he seized an opportunity in Los Angeles, launching Louis B. Mayer Pictures Corporation. His first production was Virtuous Wives, the starting line for a cinematic empire in the making. Still, the defining step in Mayer's career came in 1924. An ambitious merger combined Metro Pictures, Goldwyn Pictures, and Louis B. Mayer Productions into a single company called Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM. Alongside him was Irving Thalberg, a young genius who served as vice president in charge of production and would be recognized posthumously for his keen creative mind. Mayer, for his part, kept a grip on budgets and film selection, transforming MGM into a gargantuan force. By the late 1930s and early 1940s, MGM was releasing many of the era's most iconic motion pictures, the rise to unparalleled power. As MGM took shape, Louis B. Mayer's authority soared. He became the first American executive to earn a salary north of $1 million per year. In a span lasting from the late 1930s to the mid-1940s, he was reputedly the highest-paid individual in the entire country, bringing in sums equivalent to tens of millions in today's currency. That kind of wealth granted him near-total autonomy within Hollywood, allowing him to fund lavish sets, recruit top-tier directors, and lure audiences with unstoppable marketing. Under Mayer's iron gaze, MGM was like its own miniature city. With sprawling acreage in Culver City, California, the studio employed thousands of people across multiple divisions. There was even an in-house police force comparable to that of an entire small town. They had multiple sound stages running concurrently, churning out as many as 50 films a year. The cafeteria served thousands daily, a literal feeding ground for rising and established stars. Everyone from carpenters to scriptwriters worked side by side. New productions were continually rolling through the pipeline, ensuring that if one film failed, the next one might recoup the losses. Mayer's management style was often described as fiery. He could go into a fury if results disappointed him, but just as quickly, he could revert to an almost grandfatherly warmth. Decisions about casting or budgets hinged on his personal intuition. He rarely read scripts in full, instead gleaning the storyline from summaries. If it felt right to him, he trusted that the movie would succeed. If something bombed, he might express frustration, but he seldom canceled projects outright. MGM had enough capital to afford some risks, and under his leadership, they took plenty. But behind the shimmering veneer was an elaborate system to keep actors in line. Mayer formalized the star system, whereby raw newcomers were discovered, shaped, and unleashed upon the world as box office draws. He understood that star power sold tickets. With the help of dedicated teams, makeup artists, dance instructors, vocal coaches, plastic surgeons, he molded ordinary people into mesmerizing screen presences. His own motto was that genuine star quality was primarily about an intriguing face. Skill could be acquired or manufactured. That approach made MGM the studio everyone wanted to join. They commanded the highest salaries, they produced lavish musicals and family-friendly tales, and they offered a stage for the biggest talents. Mayer presided over it all like a monarch, emphasizing that once you were part of the MGM family, you had obligations. His paternal image, however, existed alongside rumors of intimidation, blackmail, and oppressive oversight. He expected, and in many cases required, unquestioning loyalty. A self-contained empire. Hollywood's golden age is often recalled with a nostalgic glow, but behind the camera, it operated like a fortress, policed by men such as Mayer. MGM itself was enormous. It had multiple separate lots, an extensive array of production stages, and specialized workshops for props and costumes. They turned out an entire feature film almost every week, saturating theaters with glamorous musicals, comedies, and dramas. Each star was meticulously groomed, learning everything from refined speech to how to handle a sword or do a tap dance. In that sense, the notion of Hollywood magic was not accidental. It came from an intricately organized factory-like method of production. The organization had full control over lighting, sets, wardrobes, editing, press releases, and the public persona of their talent. This machine-based approach, one that modern cinema no longer emulates so completely, was orchestrated in large part by Mayer's demands for professionalism and brand consistency. At the heart of this system, MGM boasted a top-tier marketing apparatus. Movie posters, trailers, and magazine covers all presented polished illusions. When scandal loomed, the publicity department either spun it into something benign or stamped it out. That is how filmgoers became enthralled by the studio's biggest names. Mayer was famously proud of saying that he didn't care if the press wrote endless stories about America's sweethearts or the perfect couple, as long as those stories fed the fantasy. Through all this, many stars genuinely adored Mayer. Mickey Rooney referred to him as an intensely supportive mentor, praising him for encouraging a sense of family and offering paternal guidance. Spencer Tracy, too, believed Mayer was a champion for American values, a man who truly loved the promise of the country that had rescued him from dire poverty. For every dreadful rumor, there was a near-equal account of Mayer's generosity, like paying for a star's medical treatment or stepping in to protect them from legal trouble. Inevitably, people are complex, and the paternal figure who paid for your grandmother's surgery might also be the tyrant who threatened you in a closed-door meeting. The Academy Awards, Mayer's grand idea. Louis B. Mayer was not satisfied with merely dominating the box office. He wanted a broader legacy for Hollywood. Observing tensions between studios and talent, he envisioned a platform for mutual celebration. This led to the founding of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the body responsible for the Oscars. While the official origin story is more nuanced, many credit Mayer's persuasive efforts and financing for bringing the Academy to life in 1927. The first Oscars ceremony took place in 1929. Humble by modern standards, but it laid the groundwork for what became the industry's biggest annual show. Mayer's motivation was partly altruistic. He believed in applauding cinematic artistry, and partly self-serving. He recognized the publicity windfall that an Academy Award could bring. By creating a recognized standard of excellence, he offered audiences a reason to trust that Hollywood was providing high-quality entertainment. Though the Oscars have since evolved, that initial impetus to celebrate the glamour, artistry, and grandeur of film remains. Mayer, in effect, harnessed the public's craving for spectacle and applied it not just on screen, but in a yearly event that showcased the best of the best. The public image versus the secret realities. Wherever there's smoke, there's fire. MGM's outward portrayal of innocence was meticulously choreographed, yet whispers of a different reality have long haunted Hollywood historians. The studio, and by extension Mayer, kept things quiet with an internal security team. While large, it also functioned as a kind of hush squad, ensuring that actors stayed in line and controversies never became tabloid fodder. This environment naturally bred numerous hush-hush romances. Mayer was known to meddle in the love lives of his stable of stars. He arranged fake relationships if he believed the publicity would help. If he found a coupling detrimental, he forced it apart. Countless actors were rumored to have had real or manufactured affairs under the watchful eye of the MGM publicity department. Every romantic detail, from quiet dinners to secret pregnancies, might be orchestrated or concealed. In effect, these performers were marionettes in a meticulously controlled stage show for the public's delight. Mayer's perspective on controlling every inch of his performer's existence might be traced to the moral climate of the time. Audiences, especially censors, demanded squeaky clean depictions of family. Meanwhile, the actual Hollywood set was no more sanctified than modern celebrity culture. If anything, the public's ignorance was deeper back then, because media was far easier to steer with insider money and threats of blacklisting. Once word got out, however, it could tarnish the entire brand. The stakes were enormous. Mayer's unyielding vigilance was meant to guard the image of Hollywood's paragons. If controlling relationships or paying off victims was the price, so be it. Behind the curtain, Judy Garland's torment. In a notoriously tragic example, Judy Garland's story clarifies the extremes of control at MGM. Garland, a talented singer from a young age, became a favorite of audiences worldwide after her role in The Wizard of Oz. Yet away from the marquee lights, she was browbeaten to keep her body looking a certain way. According to her own accounts, Mayer purportedly used paternal reassurance while inappropriately touching her, insisting it was fatherly affection. If that alone were not damaging enough, her struggle with diet pills administered by studio doctors haunted her for the rest of her life. During the production of Summer Stock, Garland's repeated absences nearly derailed the film. One producer wanted to shut it down. Mayer, ironically enough, intervened to keep Garland in the picture, pointing out that she had made MGM a fortune and deserved one final chance. Some observers question his motives. Was it compassion, or was it a purely business-minded attempt to wring the last profits from an ailing star? Ultimately, Garland did finish the film. But soon after, her relationship with MGM disintegrated, and she was released from her contract. This left her more vulnerable than ever, and her downward spiral continued in subsequent years. Germophobia and health obsessions. One of the more peculiar aspects of Mayer's personal life was his intense fear of germs and illnesses. He was reportedly so worried about his health that he spent a half hour every single day consulting with a physician. In an era without the advanced knowledge we have today, his constant concern led to an almost paranoid approach to well-being. He insisted on special measures to avoid contagion and demanded that his favored doctor be chauffeured to and from the studio like a VIP. During the prime of his career, this obsession was merely an odd quirk. But combined with a tendency to spy on employees' personal health matters, it gave Mayer even more control over his staff. He was known to vet which physicians they visited, ensuring that any serious ailments or potential scandalous conditions could be monitored and suppressed if necessary. Family matters and personal turmoil. Mayer's personal relationships revealed cracks in his paternal mask. In 1904, he wed Margaret Schenberg, who stayed by his side for over 40 years, an impressive feat in Tinseltown. Together, they had 2 daughters, Edith and Irene. But as his power at MGM reached its zenith, Mayer's control extended into his own household. Several accounts describe him as a domineering figure, making every major family decision. There was a chasm between him and his father, too, partly due to conflicting personalities. The fatherly persona he displayed publicly did not always translate into warmth at home. Mayer's marriage to Margaret gradually deteriorated, especially after she underwent a hysterectomy, which may have contributed to their growing distance. While it might be easy to blame Hollywood's demanding environment, insiders say their union had been troubled for some time. Despite condemning infidelity in his employees, Mayer was repeatedly unfaithful. One rumored affair involved him chasing around an actress who, after rejecting his advances, found herself and her then-agent blacklisted from the MGM lot. Finally, Margaret had enough. In 1947, she sought a divorce. By 1948, Mayer was remarried to Lorena Danker, a widow he had fallen for. Although this union seemed more companionable, the damage to family bonds was apparent. His adult daughters were never especially close to him, and he even disinherited Edith because he disagreed with her husband's liberal political leanings. This disinheritance showcases how precarious relationships with Mayer could be. If you resisted him, whether personally or ideologically, he was capable of shutting you out completely. Behind the man, scandalous affairs and vindictive punishments. Though at times Mayer portrayed himself as a moral authority, his own life often defied the conservative image he sold to ticket buyers. He was infamous for tangling with starlets. One anecdote states that an actress he fixated on refused his repeated proposals. Enraged, he threatened to leap from a window, implying that her rejection had driven him to desperation. Another story claims that upon discovering the same actress had chosen a different romantic partner, he used the studio's power to sabotage them both professionally. Such extremes highlight the complicated nature of his personality. The same man who publicly championed American virtues was privately orchestrating hidden affairs, punishing spurned lovers, and banishing those who opposed him. These tactics were reminiscent of a mafia boss who used intimidation as naturally as a handshake. His rumored cover-up for Clark Gable's alleged vehicular homicide remains among the more chilling pieces of lore. Though unconfirmed, it epitomizes how deeply his influence stretched, and why so many feared crossing him. Hollywood, for him, was an empire where all roads led back to the throne. If you contributed to the dynasty, you were rewarded. If you rebelled, you were promptly exiled. Golden age to waning era. The unstoppable momentum of MGM eventually began to falter after World War II. By the mid to late 1940s, the studio's profits started slipping. Changing audience tastes, competition from television, and less stringent censorship rules gradually eroded the stranglehold of the old studio system. MGM's unstoppable run of hits dwindled. Where they once boasted over 20 big moneymakers in a year, they began producing significantly fewer. Increasingly desperate, Mayer tried to restructure the studio, slashing costs and reimagining big productions. Under pressure from MGM's parent company, Lowe's Inc., he hired Dor Sherry, a talented producer known for more modern, issue-driven films. It was an odd pairing. Sherry's forward-thinking style clashed with Mayer's old-fashioned brand of wholesome epics. Tension between them escalated. Sensing the friction, Nicholas Schenck, who controlled Lowe's from New York, decided it was time for a change at the top. In 1951, after nearly 3 decades at the helm, Mayer was shown the door. The official explanation was that the breakup was by mutual consent. In truth, many recognized it as a forced resignation. The man who had created the blueprint for Hollywood's dream factory found himself outside the castle gates. An emotional send-off included a red carpet and applause from staff. But it was a bittersweet coda. The empire he shaped would soon enter a new era under Dor Sherry's leadership. Struggles in the aftermath. For someone as proud and controlling as Mayer, being pushed aside was devastating. He attempted an independent production career, flirting with the promising new widescreen technology known as Cinerama. He even dreamed of bringing Paint Your Wagon to life in a widescreen format. But these grand visions never reached fruition, and after a brief time he left the company overseeing that technology. Others in the film world were hesitant to partner with him. Without MGM's might, Mayer was simply another producer past his prime. He never fully recovered from the public blow to his reputation. Most heartbreakingly, he was also losing his health. Diagnosed with leukemia, he underwent multiple transfusions late in life. His final days were consumed by intense pain and medical complications. Sinking into a coma, the one-time King of Hollywood passed away on October 29, 1957, at the age of 73. Legacy and lasting controversies. Few individuals have so clearly defined an era in entertainment. Mayer was there at the dawn of the studio system, forging the path that other studios rushed to emulate. He wasn't only shaping films, he was molding the American psyche through the stories people watched. Many historians observe that the optimism and sentimentality present in classic MGM productions mirrored Mayer's personal, albeit romanticized, view of the United States. He wanted narrative arcs that validated marriage, sanctified motherhood, and portrayed virtues of loyalty, honesty, and determination. And for decades, he delivered them to appreciative audiences. Yet the darker half of that story refuses to be glossed over. Many stars have left behind recollections of a vicious man behind the fatherly grin. He purportedly used fear as a management tool, blackmail as a means of control, and physical intimidation if necessary. Child actors, especially, speak of traumatizing episodes with him. The tabloids of the time, heavily influenced by the studios, seldom reported these events. Consequently, the public never suspected that the man behind their favorite musicals and comedies was systematically destroying some of his greatest talents with intimidation, overwork, and emotional abuse. After his death, the tributes at his funeral were grandiose. Hollywood royalty, from well-known actors to other studio chiefs, gathered to pay their respects. Some offered sincere praise, describing him as the man who believed wholeheartedly in the American dream. Others, no longer bound by contracts, quietly confided that they felt a measure of relief to see the passing of such a domineering figure. His approach to fatherhood, ironically, was among the factors that shaped popular culture's paternal archetype. In movies, paternal figures often exuded protective warmth. Meanwhile, the real father figure of Hollywood had cast a long shadow across actual lives. The complicated father dynamic resonates to this day in how the entertainment industry grapples with power structures. The line between mentorship and exploitation is perilously thin. Two sides of the coin, genius and tyranny. By any measure, Louis B. Mayer played an enormous role in the history of motion pictures. In a sense, he was the original talent developer, turning unknown faces into star attractions, draping them in the glitz audiences demanded. He was also the force behind forging MGM's family-friendly film library, carefully cultivating a brand that, at its best, offered hope, aspiration, and a soothing vision of life's possibilities. That brand identity has lingered for decades. Even modern MGM projects carry a hint of that legacy. On the flip side, testimonies of exploitation, misogyny, and invasive surveillance paint a grim portrait of a man obsessed with power. The fact that he disinherited a daughter because her husband's politics offended him underscores his capacity for cruelty. The alleged cover-ups, the illicit affairs, the purported megalomania, each piece of gossip adds another thread to the tapestry of his myth. Separating fact from fiction can be difficult, but the pattern of allegations that emerges from multiple sources indicates that controlling, manipulative behavior was a defining feature of his empire. Nonetheless, some have rallied to defend him. Certain associates recall unwavering generosity, a man who, if he liked you, would do anything to see you succeed. They remember paternal kindness, holiday gifts, personal favors, and unwavering loyalty. Indeed, the sheer range of experiences might reflect the complexity of dealing with someone who possessed nearly absolute power. To be on Mayer's good side was to have a champion with almost limitless resources. To be on his bad side was to risk your livelihood, your relationships, and your peace of mind. Reflections on morality, image, and power. Looking back, it's crucial to acknowledge that neither MGM's squeaky-clean family narratives nor the rumors of horrific personal misconduct tell the entire story of classic Hollywood. This was an era of bright lights and even darker shadows, where moral codes were enforced through the production code, but simultaneously subverted by clandestine lifestyles. Studios thrived on illusions, and no one wielded illusions more successfully than Mayer. Audiences got musicals that sparkled with hope. Producers and fixers toiled behind the scenes to keep real tragedies concealed. Some watchers of film history argue that the existence of such authoritarian moguls actually protected mainstream values on screen. The argument goes that modern-day content is far more explicit, less uplifting, and more ambiguous in its moral conclusions. Under men like Mayer, you got a consistent product. Stories about love, redemption, and triumph. But this viewpoint neglects the price paid by child stars like Judy Garland, or vulnerable young actresses pressed to accept an unwanted proposition. The veneer of innocence in old Hollywood was partly constructed upon the heartbreak of real individuals. In the end, the question might not be whether Mayer was a saint or a demon, but how someone so vital to an entire creative medium could embody so many extremes. He was responsible for building up the star system that continues to define show business. He helped establish the Academy Awards, now recognized internationally as a pinnacle of cinematic achievement. Yet he exemplified the oppressive side of the studio era, in which an executive could own you body, mind, and spirit. Conclusion: the real Hollywood script. Louis B. Mayer's life has all the elements of a Hollywood screenplay: poverty, relentless drive, staggering achievement, dark secrets, and a poignant downfall. He lived an immigrant's rags-to-riches fantasy, climbing from the vantage point of a junk dealer to becoming the highest-paid person in America. During his peak, he was unstoppable, spearheading MGM through its greatest years. By the 1950s, his star had faded, leaving him ousted from the empire he built and battling terminal illness. He was a champion of the big dream, a fervent believer in America's potential, and a maestro at constructing cinematic fantasies. At the same time, he cast a menacing shadow. So many have described him in monstrous terms, recalling experiences of fear, anguish, and exploitation. In many ways, his layered personality underscores the complexity of classic Hollywood itself, a realm bursting with imagination, inundated with illusions of virtue, but plagued by an undercurrent of hypocrisy and oppression. To this day, debates persist about whether Mayer was a necessary tough leader in a world of rowdy starlets and giant egos, or a cruel tyrant who assaulted the vulnerable and gained from the suffering of others. Perhaps both viewpoints hold truth. Historical context matters, and in an era with fewer regulations, an authoritarian figure might have been inevitable to maintain order. But that doesn't negate the stories of assault, nor does it absolve him of the heartbreak he inflicted. Undeniably, Louis B. Mayer left a permanent imprint on Hollywood, and by extension, the world. He shaped the collective imagination, championed the big-budget spectacle, and orchestrated the mythology of screen legends. Yet the manipulations and traumas that many endured under him remain an equally undeniable part of that legacy. Today's film industry, with its myriad agencies, streaming platforms, and global reach, looks drastically different. But echoes of Mayer's star system and paternal authority still linger in the demands studios place on emerging talent, in the controversies that occasionally burst into the public eye, and in the complicated dance between creative freedom and business imperatives. In revisiting his tale, we uncover a mirror pointed at our own enduring fascination with stardom. We see an institution built as much on controlling narratives as on nurturing them. Mayer's story cautions that for every moment of cinematic magic, there might be hidden truths lurking behind the curtain. It's a reminder that neither the so-called good old days nor the present is fully wholesome. Possibly, there never has been, and never will be, a moment when illusions and reality do not tussle behind the stage lights. Ultimately, as the camera pans away from the final scene, Louis B. Mayer stands as an iconic and perplexing figure, a father of the entertainment world who shaped dreams while practicing nightmares, lionized for his achievements but whispered about in hushed tones for his darker side. He gave millions an escape from their struggles through joyous films, forging a cultural phenomenon that still resonates. And he left a complicated legacy that is both celebratory and cautionary, forever intertwining those gilded illusions with haunting, real-life struggles.